喂，咁多位大家好啦，我係梁 Sir。今次呢段片呢，就係有關於科學探究嘅變項嘅。好多同學咧都成日問啦，喂，梁 Sir啊，究竟咧 IV、DV、CV 咧點樣分㗎？聽咧就聽得明嘅，但係一做實驗咧就即刻唔識啦。咁大家都知道啦，梁 Sir 係好中意科學探究嘅。今次梁 Sir 就用一個科學探究去貫穿三個 V 俾你聽，包你聽得明。咁其實啦，梁 Sir 咧就唔係淨係拍呢三個 V 嘅短片嘅。其實之前咧我都拍咗一大堆咧有關於科學探究嘅片段，全部咧都喺晒破解 SBA 嘅呢一個 playlist 入面嘅。除咗DSE 嘅 MC 解說之外啦，其實都有呢兩段旗艦片嘅。第一段就係破解翻究竟係咪所有科學探究都需要假說。第二段嘅旗艦片咧就係有關於公平測試，喺呢三個 V 同 fair test 之間究竟有啲咩嘅關係呢？好，咁我哋正式入三個 V 咯。正所謂基本功冇得妥協，梁 Sir 成日同大家講嘅，學任何一科都好，我哋都有一啲共通語言係一定學咗先嘅。而呢一樣嘢就係大家好唔願意接受，但係你一定要學習面對嘅，就係你要記一記咯。因為你連個定義都唔識，我哋點溝通啊？第一個啦就係 independent variable，IV 獨立變項或者叫自變項。呢個變項係由實驗者所改變，即係由我哋話事嘅。我要佢多就多，我要佢少就少噶啦。Dependent variable 因變項、應變項或者所謂嘅 DV， 佢就係因應住隨住自變項所改變而得出嚟嘅變項，所以亦都係我哋實驗當中要量度嘅。嗱，IV 就我改變嘅，我俾多啲咩佢，或者俾少啲咩佢。而 DV 呢，就係我哋嘅結果啦，係我哋想去觀察嘅東西。而去到最後尾啦 ，control variable，CV 控制變項，就係去形容一堆變項呢，喺實驗當中嘅唔同裝置都要一模一樣，保持不變。所以呢一 part 咧都係由我控制，不過我冇改變到佢，我係要令到佢哋保持不變。呢度咧有一個概念咧想提一提嘅，其實呢個所謂嘅變項 variables 咧，咁無論你用中文學定用英文學咧，都係有少少有陣時咩叫變數啊，梁 Sir 咩叫變項啊？其實你當佢係一個 factor 一個因素去理解就得噶啦。呢個咧係獨立嘅因素，係由我去控制嘅。另一個係隨住人哋變化而佢會作出變化嘅因素，而最後尾就係一個我控制住保持不變嘅因素。而家我哋即刻嚟睇下科學探究啦噃。如果你淨係學完嗰三個 V 嘅定義，而係冇任何嘅實戰例子嘅話呢，你永遠唔會明嘅。所以梁 Sir 一定係會加啲科學探究俾大家，去培養下大家嘅科學探究嘅思維嘅。咁而家啦，我哋咧有個觀察咯，啲農夫咧加咗啲肥料落去個泥土嗰處，就令到棵植物咧就能夠健康成長啦。所以咧，我哋就想探究一下，究竟泥土肥沃嘅時候，植物係咪就會生得好啲呢？所以啊，成個實驗嘅目的就係為咗探究翻肥料對加快植物成長嘅重要性。而當中我哋想要探究嘅問題就係點解施肥之後會令到植物係會加速成長呢？嗱，呢個係我哋嘅觀察嚟噶嘛。咁我哋咪問咯，係加咗肥料之後咧，真係生得快咗噶？點解呢？既然我哋問得點解呢，我哋就要有一個假說啦，而呢個假說係嘗試去解釋一下肥料有咩咁重要，肥料就可以加速植物嘅成長啦。咁根據呢個假說所講呢，其實我哋就會建立到一個因果關係啦。施肥係個因，促進植物成長係個果。不過係咪堅噶？啱唔啱嘅先？呢個假說係咪正確呢？我哋就要做實驗去睇一睇啦。咁我明啦，梁 Sir， 好簡單啫。咁我就加啲肥料落去個泥土咪得咯。呢個就係我哋嘅實驗裝置。如果我哋呢個假說係正確嘅話，加咗肥料又真係可以促進植物成長嘅，咁咪即係加咗肥料佢會生得快啲咯。咁真正嘅結果又如何啊？哎呀，真係噶，梁 Sir， 多咗肥料之後呢，棵植物真係成長咗噶。喺呢度我哋就能夠建構到第一個知識啦，就係乜嘢叫做 DV， 乜嘢叫做 IV。原來就係因果關係，個因就係有冇肥料，而呢一個有冇肥料係我話事噶嘛，我加肥料或者我唔加肥料係實驗者控制，所以佢就係一個 IV。而 DV 就係棵植物嘅成長啦，佢生得好唔好啊？呢個係個果嚟嘅，咁所以大家要明白因與果，只要你分得清，你就會知道邊個係 IV， 邊個係 DV 咯。當我有呢個實驗裝置之後啦，我係咪就可以話俾人哋聽？嗱，聽住啦，加咗肥料呢，植物就會加速成長噶啦，係唔係先？係咪真係有因果關係先？咁可能有人會挑戰你嘅實驗結果噶。 唔一定關啲肥料事嘅，可能係棵植物咧自己本身好強壯啦，可能嗰排啊陽光普照又有雨水啊，咁棵嘢咪生得好咯，關你啲肥料咩事啫？所以我哋就需要對照實驗啦。而對照實驗，我就特登唔加肥料俾你。嗱，你話啊嘛，你挑戰我啲肥料唔得啊嘛，我唔加咯，唔加又睇下如何。死啦，真係生得慢咗喎，咁點算呢？代表咩意思呢？喺呢一 part，我順便同大家溫下書啦。你噏唔噏得出對照實驗嘅重要性啊？咁當我哋講對照實驗有咩重要性之前呢，同大家歸納下我哋剛剛講咗嘅嘢先。泥土嘅肥沃程度係我話事嘅，所以呢個就係 independent variable IV 自變項。而植物成長係我去觀察嘅，所以佢係 DV 因變項。不過植物成長嘅快與慢，你點知啊？咩叫快啊？咩叫慢啊？梁 Sir， 所以我哋就要學識量度植物嘅成長，就係透過量度棵植物嘅高度。所以嚴格嚟講，我哋嘅 DV 因變項應該係植物嘅高度，而唔係植物嘅成長，因為植物嘅成長太空泛啊。如果我哋能夠將佢量化成為生高咗10cm、生高咗20cm，我哋就會清清楚楚啦。照實驗同埋我哋嘅實驗裝置最大嘅分別就係個 IV 唔同咗，一個就有加肥料，另一個就特登唔加肥料，係為咗去解決人哋對我哋嘅挑戰。人哋話噶嘛，關你啲肥料咩事啊？棵植物自己生得好咪生得好咯。OK， 我就特登唔加俾你，咁點啊？可以確保實驗結果係由我哋所探究嘅因素所造成。今次我哋探究啲咩因素啊？而我哋所探究嘅因素就係我哋嘅自變項，就係有冇肥料呢？咁所以透過實驗裝置同埋對照裝置呢，我哋就可以確保到植物嘅成長嘅快與慢係隨住泥土嘅肥沃程度而改變。但係仍然會有人挑戰我哋，究竟仲有冇其他因素都會影響棵植物嘅成長呢？如果日照嘅光度啦，你灌水夠唔夠啦，植物嘅種類啦，如此種種。咁面對呢啲挑戰啦，我哋又要點做呢？而家就去到最後尾一個變項，控制變項啦。我哋有 IV， 我哋有 DV， 為咗確保實驗嘅公平，我哋就只會改變我哋想探究嘅因素，亦即係自變項，有冇肥料呢？而喺實驗嘅裝置同埋對照嘅裝置呢，其他嘅因素應該要保持不變，亦即係頭先我哋所講嘅日照嘅光度啦，多唔多水啦，棵植物係咪同一個種類啦，我哋都要控制得到嘅。喺今次嘅實驗入面， IV 同 DV 就係施肥同埋植物高度之間嘅因果關係。我頭先都有講過啦，只要你能夠看穿一個實驗嘅因果關係， IV 同 DV 就出晒嚟噶啦。而 controlled variable 控制變項喺整個實驗嘅唔同裝置入面，應該係保持不變。我哋對於實驗裝置同埋對照裝置之間提供嘅太陽光要一樣光度，灌嘅水要一樣份量，植物嘅品種要一樣，植物嘅初始狀態都要一樣，確保到植物嘅高度就只係受到施肥與否嘅影響。呢個就係 IV、DV 同 CV 一個聖三一嘅結合啦。好，極速溫一溫書啦。喺一個公平測試入面， IV 係我改變嘅嘢， DV 係我觀察我量度嘅嘢，而 CV 就係我保持不變嘅嘢。所以喺今次呢條題目，我哋就會發現啦，泥土嘅肥沃程度就係我哋嘅 IV， 植物嘅高度我去量度嘅就係個 DV， 而其餘嘅灌水嘅份量啊、植物嘅品種啊同植物嘅初次狀態呢，就係我哋嘅控制變項啦。梁 Sir 成日講到口臭噶啦，基本功冇得妥協 ，no magic。Only basic 呢段片唔單止幫助到讀高中 bio 嘅你，亦都對初中 IS 嘅你呢，亦都非常之重要。因為科學探究呢一樣嘢係初中、高中我哋都一定要學識嘅。大家如果有睇過 Pokemon 或者係咒術迴戰，就知咩叫御三家。假說3V 同埋公平測試就係御三家，係成個科學探究精髓當中嘅精髓。所以呢段片啊，大家聽完明白咗嘅，share 出去俾你嘅同學仔，等大家都可以知道科學探究嘅御三家精神。經過成段片啦，咁我希望大家明白到 3V 究竟係啲咩嘢啦。咁而家 Anya 咧就想做個實驗，當植物吸收充足陽光啦，植物咧就會健康成長。 咁 Anya 咧就想探究一下，究竟陽光充足嘅話，植物係咪會生長得好啲呢？而家大家可唔可以幫阿 Anya 去分得清，究竟喺呢一個公平測試底下，佢嘅 IV、DV、CV 係乜嘢呢？期待大家喺留言區嘅答案。拜拜。In this video, I'm going to talk about the variables in scientific investigation. IV, DV, CV. All the students, they keep asking Mr. Leung, what are they? How can we distinguish them, no matter you are junior form or senior form students? Because we really need some practice to improve our skills to identify these three variables. In case you forget, I need to remind you that before this video about the three variables, Mr. Leung has made a lot of videos about the SBA and the scientific investigation. 1, 2, 3, 4. One of the videos I talk about, do we need hypothesis for every scientific investigation? Next video is about fair test. How could we confirm if the investigation is a fair test? If you have not yet watched these two videos, watch them now and clarify your concept. And Mr. Leung always mentioned that no magic, only basic. That's why we need to recall the definitions of these three variables first before we really use the scientific investigation as the example to explain that. For the independent variable IV, it is the only variable that is changed by us, and it is the factor we are investigating or studying. And for dependent variable DV, it is the variable that may change with IV and the variable to be measured. So you can see from the name dependent. So that means DV, it depends on what? It depends on the IV. So that means it depends on what we change and that it may change. And for the controlled variable CV, are the variables kept the same or constant in different setups. So after we have this common language, we can proceed to the scientific investigation to use the example to demonstrate that how can we identify IV, DV, and CV. So based on the observation, we found that the farmers apply fertilizer in the soil to make the plant to grow better. And I want to investigate if the plants can grow better in the more fertile soil. So the aim of the investigation is to study the importance of fertilizer in promoting the growth of the plants. And what is the question we are going to investigate? So we are going to ask, why do the plants grow more quickly if they are growing in a soil with fertilizer? After we ask the question, why? So we need a hypothesis to make a proposed explanation to this problem. And the proposed reason is that the presence of fertilizer promotes the growth of the plants. So the idea is that according to the hypothesis, we can see the cause and the effect. The cause is the presence of fertilizer. We add them to the soil. And the result, the effect is it will promote the growth of the plants. However, we need to consider, is this hypothesis correct? That's the reason we need to do the experiment. So you may ask that, I know Mr. Leung. So in the experimental setup, I add the fertilizer to the soil and then I just take a look at the growth of the plant. So I predicted that the plant, it will grow more quickly in soil with fertilizer. So what is the result? What we obtain is that rapid growth of the plant is observed in the soil with fertilizer. So from this setup, we have the general concept that the growth of the plants, it depends on the presence of fertilizer. Therefore, the plant growth is the DV, dependent variable. It depends on the IV, which is the presence of fertilizer. So after we can identify IV and DV, so let's move on. Once we have the experimental setup, can we conclude that, fertilizer is very important, Mr. Leung. It can promote the growth of the plant. So some people may challenge the result and think that the fertilizer may not be the crucial factor. Maybe within that moment, the sunlight is so good, perfect sunshine, and you add a lot of water to promote the growth, and it is nothing related to the fertilizer. How can we deal with this challenge? we need a control setup. And we intentionally do not add fertilizer to the soil and see the result. There is a slower growth of the plant. So what's going on, Mr. Leung? So before we move on, can you recall the importance of the control setup in the whole experiment? Before we answer this question, we have a summary for what we have just mentioned. First of all, what is the IV? Is the soil fertility. The experimental setup, I add the fertilizer. In the control setup, I do not add the fertilizer. And what is the dependent variable? We observe the plant growth. Rapid growth in the experimental setup and slower growth in the control setup. However, plant growth, these terms is so ambiguous, it's too general to be understood. That's why we need to manipulate it, to measure it. So how can we measure the plant growth? We measure the height of the plants. So technically, the dependent variable, it should be the height of the plants. So we have the idea that the height of the plants, it depends on the soil fertility. So we can see that the control setup is identical to the experimental setup, except the factor under investigation is absent. That means the fertilizer. It aims to ensure the result of the experiment is only due to the factor under investigation. The plants with fertilizer, they can grow taller. And the plant without fertilizer, they grow shorter. That's the idea of the control setup. Therefore, by using the experimental setup and the control setup, we try to confirm that the plant growth is affected only by the soil fertility. However, someone may still challenge us that there may be any other factors which can also affect the growth of the plants. For example, the light intensity, water supply, and the types of the plants. So what can we do? And it's the time for us to talk about the control variables. For these two setups, experimental setup and the control setup, in order to ensure the experiment is a fair test, we only change the factor under investigation, which is the IV, and keep all other factors the same in the experimental setup and the control setup. And these factors, they are called controlled variables. So now we can construct this triangle to conclude the secret of the variables. In this experiment, the IV and DV, they are the presence of fertilizer, which is the cause, and the height of the plants we observe, it is the effect. And for the control setup, we keep them the same to make sure that there is one and only one cause to affect the height of the plants. So that's why the CV, we need to keep the sunlight, amount of water, types of plants used, and the initial state of the plant the same in both experimental setup and the control setup. So let's have the summary. IV, the only variable that is changed. DV, the variable that may change with the IV and the variable to be measured. For the CV, the variable that are kept the same or constant in different setups. So in this scientific investigation, we know that the IV is the soil fertility and the DV is the height of the plants. And for the amount of water supply, type of plants, and initial state of the plant, or even the sunlight intensity, they are the controlled variables. So this video does not only help in senior form biology, but also in junior form integrated science. So the key idea is that hypothesis, the free variables, and fair tests, they are the crucial parts of the scientific investigation. So remember that, no magic, only basic. After watch this video and you understand it, share this video to your classmates. So it's time to challenge you all. After watching this video, you understand what is the free variables, so it's time to practice. Based on the observation, the plant grow better when they receive more sunlight. And now Anya, she wants to investigate if the plants can grow better in a bright light environment. So, can you help her to state the IV, DV, CV in this investigation? Tell me your answer in the comment section. I look forward to seeing your answer. Bye!